Hey guys, this is Lovely with Lovely Esteem, and welcome back to the Infidelity and Confidence Rebuilding course. We are on week 4, setting boundaries and communicating your needs. This week, we're going to be talking about the role of boundaries in healing, assertive communications versus aggressive communications. We're going to do some exercises in that. We're going to talk about practical exercises for boundary setting. We have some really good practical tools that we can work with. We're going to also talk about ways to role play scenarios so that when we are put into situations that make us feel uncomfortable or that stretch us beyond our emotional capabilities, we have ways to cope with those situations and really find more connection and grounding in who we are and rebuilding trust in ourselves. Remember, this course is all about building trust in yourself. It's all about learning how to set firmer boundaries, learning how to have healthier communication styles, self-compassion. We are here to work on this healing journey. Infidelity is a thing that happens. It does not define who you are. And that's why we are here to really talk about these things and to spread more information about healing than we are about the wounds themselves, right? I also want to advise you that I I want you to go see a counselor. I want you to go see a therapist. I want you to talk to your psychiatrist, your coach, your mentor. These are people who are put in the space to help create safe spaces for us, to help us outline what our healing looks like, to help us dig deeper into the conversations that we can have about what it looks like to transform ourselves from these unhealed souls walking into healing. You do not have to do it by yourself. I also want to put caveat. If you feel like doing it by yourself is the best way for you, then you do that as well. Don't let people bully you into believing that healing has one way of working. We are multicultural, multi-complex people, and we have to remember that healing does not have one road. It has multiple roads, and sometimes the road is crazy. So, what does it mean when you are creating roles for boundaries in healing? What does that look like? Rebuilding self-trust, safety, and self-worth. Healing from emotional wounds, whether caused by infidelity, betrayal, toxic relationships, or deep personal trauma, requires intentionality. My word for this year is intentional, like being very intentional about how I heal, how I talk to people, the things I say yes to, and the things I say no to. But you have to be very intentional when you are working and rebuilding trust and rebuilding safety and self-worth, especially after any kind of deep personal trauma and or betrayal, right? So, one of the most powerful tools in the healing process is setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. And that's what we're talking about today. Sometimes boundaries can act as a form of self-protection, allowing you to regain control of your emotions, establishing a sense of safety, and rebuilding your self-worth. They define what is acceptable and unacceptable in your relationships, right? So, helping you create a life that aligns with your emotional, mental, and physical well being. And as I read this, I think to myself, what boundaries really helped me do was set up a more secure foundation for myself. A lot of us think that boundaries are all about like blocking people out or making it so that people don't get in. But for me, a lot of boundary setting, especially healthy boundary setting, it revolved around me learning how to talk to me better. It revolved around me learning how to listen to me better. It revolved around how I spoke to myself, the things that I thought about myself, the way I treated my physical self and my spiritual self, my emotional self, right? Even my financial self, because I was not always good with that. So you can be healing from different kinds of betrayal and different kinds of infidelity. Sometimes the betrayal is you, the way you treat yourself, right? We always think that betrayal comes from the outside, but sometimes it really is on the inside. And we have to learn how to attack those things in a healthy way so that our minds change the algorithm in the language that we accept from ourselves. So, first, let's talk about reclaiming self worth and personal power. This one was very good because I liked a lot of the information that was attached to this, right? One of the most devastating impacts of betrayal, especially in cases of infidelity or emotional abuse, is loss of self worth. Remember, when we're talking about boundaries, we set boundaries because we are building ourselves up. We're putting value into ourselves first. And sometimes we don't know how to do that. That's what safe spaces are for. So it's common to internalize the hurt, question your value and your significance to yourself and to others, right? Boundaries help you reclaim your sense of self by reinforcing that your feelings, needs, and well being matters. Mm, listen to that. Reclaim your sense of self. When you are reclaiming your sense of self, you are reclaiming self-worth. You're taking back your power. You are presenting resilience to less you're practicing resilience with yourself. That's super big. By setting clear limits on what you will and won't tolerate, your community by setting clear limits on what you will and won't tolerate, you communicate to yourself first and others that you are worthy of respect, love, and care. This is a crucial step in regaining personal power as it prevents you from feeling helpless and victimizing in the wake of emotional pain. When I hear conversations like this, I try to make sure that I allow myself to be open because I don't believe that many of us are interested in being perceived as helpless or victims of anything. And we can sometimes come off a little defensive and be combative because we're like, I'm nobody's victim. I'm not helpless. Listen, there are times in our lives when something's going to happen and it literally it pulls the carpet from under our feet. And when that happens, it leaves you in the air. And that is the time where you can feel helpless. You can feel like a victim. And it doesn't define you, it's a situation that happens. And that's why we learn how to provide ourselves with better coping skills. We learn how to have practical ways of looking at trauma, of looking at our lives, of looking at problems and seeing, does the emotion that I'm attaching to the situation match the situation that I'm in? Because sometimes we may start being upset about one thing, but the emotion that we're attaching to it belongs to something else. And those are the times where I want us to really like take a moment and step back, right? Okay, betrayal, infidelity, emotional abuse, high level emotional trauma, high level emotional trauma, right? You can be betrayed by somebody that you're not intimate with, right? Those platonic betrayals. You can have emotional abuse from all sides. It can be at work, it can be at school, it can be in your relationships, it could be with someone intimate. It's not just stuck there. Infidelity is one of those emotion like high level emotional emergencies where it it may make you question so many different parts of you and break down so many different parts of you at one time that reclaiming your self-worth and your personal power feels almost unattainable at the moment. But if somebody continues to dismiss your feelings or gaslight you, setting boundaries can help limit conversations with them. It can help you work on refusing to engage in arguments. It can help you in spaces where people invalidate your emotions because they are trying to pass the blame on to you versus accept the fact that they may have done something that is unacceptable and that you don't have to deal with it because they did it. Like, there was nowhere written down in a love book that said, hey, if I really do something nasty to you, you should have to accept it because you love me, right? Maybe there's a book somewhere. I just don't read those chapters because what we're not going to do is make me feel like Boo Boo the Fool out here. And a lot of us be out here Boo Boo the Fool, and I've been Boo Boo the Fool. I just hope I looked good while I was doing it. That's all I can tell you. And the next thing we want to talk about is preventing further emotional harm. This is interesting because when we are healing from the wounds of despair and anger and depression, when we are in denial, when we are being triggered on a consistent basis, when we are living in a realm of self comparison and we are devaluing who we are because of an infidelity, most of the most challenging aspects of avoiding repeated self harm is like constantly opening up the wound, right? Because a lot of us, we have we have a tendency to like want to rehash the situation in hopes that we can make it make sense to us. And my therapist was so poetic when he said, why would you be trying to understand somebody who would do something to you that you would never do to them? I was like, sir, but I paid you for this. You ain't had to talk to me like that. You really didn't have to talk to me like that, right? So, without clear boundaries, individuals who have hurt you may continue to manipulate you, pressure you, disrespect you during your healing process. This is why I'm so I want to make boundaries for ourselves so urgent. I want us to make boundaries for ourselves a priority. Because if you set a boundary for yourself and you really practice that boundary and you work on that boundary and you're aggressive with that boundary and you don't allow yourself to break that promise to yourself, when somebody else comes around you who tries to step in and or break that boundary, who tries to um manipulate that boundary, you will have you will you will prioritize your healing. You will prioritize your growth. You will protect yourself first, right? It'll feel like a personal offense or attack on you as a person when they break that boundary. And you're going to be more likely to set consequences to others for their actions when they disrespect you, pressure you, or manipulate you when you are walking in this healing space, right? So, by setting firm boundaries, you create a protective barrier that prevents further emotional, mental, or even physical damage. This is so true when you still have to be in spaces with the person who caused the issue, or when you are in an emotionally abusive space, right? And some things you're not going to be able to prevent from happening because of the danger that you're in. I want us to remember that we can call 911, we have 211, we have 988. When we are talking about finding resources to help us get out of situations like that. And I know that it's not that easy. I I personally know it's not that easy just to get out, okay? But I'm just letting you know that there are definitely some avenues that we can take. I'm like interested 211, 311, 911, 988. Just remember, like sometimes when people give you all of this information, you feel completely overwhelmed. But those three numbers, 211, 311, 988, and 911. Just remember those, right? Keep them in here. Some non-emergency, some with regards to mental health, some emergency. So, and some one is resources. I think 211 may be resources, 311 non-emergency, 911 emergency, 988 is regard to mental health or if you have suicidal ideology, things like that. They can really get you in contact with people. Nothing is fail proof, but that is just something I want us to really focus on, right? So when we are building or creating a protective barrier to prevent us from that emotional, mental, and physical damage, I want us to remember that it helps ensure that our healing journey is not disrupted by external forces. That's why we're creating that protective barrier. That's why we are creating safe spaces for ourselves, finding safe communities for ourselves. I will actually try to create I have a list of resources. I'll upload a list of resources where you can find community and spaces, excuse me, you can find spaces for you to talk to people about what you're going through, right? Some of the examples maybe if you have an unfaithful partner who keeps trying to minimize their actions or pressure you into moving on. I could do a whole dissertation on moving on. Before you're ready, a boundary might include limiting conversations about reconciliation until you feel emotionally safe to discuss it. Everybody who goes through infidelity doesn't leave, but everybody who goes through infidelity definitely has to heal for themselves individually and then really work on healing the marriage itself or the relationship itself. And I will say this, it will never be that relationship again. Whatever happened before D-Day, you got to let that go. It now is tainted. It no longer has the same prestige. And probably if we look back at that relationship in general, it wasn't the best relationship either emotionally or mentally, maybe even physically. And I'm not saying that you have to stay, but I can't tell people to leave. This this whole course is about working on personal growth. This is on personal healing. This is about building the person up so that they have the tools that they need if they go through a situation like this or if you've gone through a situation like this so that you can learn how to maneuver through these intense emotions and learn how to have a quicker response to your healing. Sometimes we get stuck right in like just a very hollow pocket when trauma happens to us and we don't know how to move on or make it better because we weren't given the tools. And I feel like talking about these things, breaking the stigma of being quiet, understanding that relationships go through hard times. I'm not saying that this has to be your hard time and like your lesson, but we do have situations where people go through things and they decide to work it out, and that doesn't make you any less of a person. You have to do what works for you. You have to figure out what works for your relationship. And you want the result of your healing journey to make you feel like you're in a healthier space, a more peaceful space, a safe and sane space, a more serene relationship with yourself, your God, and the person that you're with. It makes a difference. But if one of you don't work on healing, it's not going to work out. I wish I could say it was, but it's not, right? Because if you want to heal and that other person is still trying to victim blame, that's not going to work. If that person is trying to work on it and you want to be the victim consistently, that's not going to work out. If you both work on healing individually, but you never work on what it looks like to be in a relationship with each other, it's not going to work out, not the way you want it to. Now, I know some people who love to be in a relationship where they just constantly remind each other of the bad things they did and it looks super intense. I can't tell you how to be in a relationship because each relationship is so very unique, but you want to be in a space where you can be yourself. You want to be in a space and a relationship with someone where you don't have to hide parts of you in order to fit in. You want to be in a relationship with someone who allows you to feel all of the different versions of yourself, the goofy side, the sad side, the melancholy side, the joyful side, the calm side, the peace side, that rage that sometimes we have, right? And especially as we get older and hormones kick in or lack of hormones kick in, it can feel like you don't really have a full grasp of who you are as a person because you're changing so much. But add to that another person's hormones or lack thereof hormones and their lack of healing, your lack of healing, and you can see how a relationship can kind of just spiral out of control, especially if you aren't intentional about your healing and your protective barriers, your boundaries, your self-esteem, your self-confidence, self-reflection, self-work, emotional intelligence. You see all these different things. And some days you just like, I'm gonna just be by myself. But you can be toxic to yourself. You can betray yourself. So I need you to work on these things because you ultimately are your bestest bestie. And would you want your bestie to have their best life? Yes. So I'm gonna need you to work on yours too. Yes, I do. Hmm. Oh, I hope you guys are good. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.